Well, everyone, the M1 iMac came out. I went ahead and bought it. Now let's go ahead and compare it to, I guess, the Intel iMacs. Now the specific model I have is the 2015 iMac, but I've owned almost every single one of them, and I haven't reviewed the 2020 ones, but I did own it at one point, which I'm so sad that I didn't get able to, push any footage out. But as most of you know, the Intel iMacs are going to not be as good of a deal as the M1 iMacs, but there are still some features of the Intel iMacs that the M1 iMacs don't even have anymore that are universal for the, 4K model, and it goes up to the 5K model as well, which is the one I have. Now, I will tell you, if you want the most future-proofed option, the iMac that's going to get you the better bang for your buck right now, is probably the M1 iMac. These Intel iMacs are good for now, but they're not going to last as long as these M1 iMacs. And think about it like this. Apple is telling us, okay, we're already transitioning away from Intel. Those are outdated. The M1 is the new standard. It is the new one we're using. So there's no point in you picking up an older one right now. So I would recommend, if you're planning on buying a 5K iMac, they don't sell the 4K iMac anymore, only the 4.5K one, then you might want to wait, because the new M1 27-inch, whatever they're going to call it, the new 5K replacer is essentially right around the corner. Within the next couple of months, not even a year, it's going to be out and it's going to be in everyone's hands, similar to the M1 iMac. So that's my biggest kind of brush over thing I would recommend telling you guys, is essentially, if you're planning on wanting to get that 5K iMac, that bigger one, you may want to wait out just a couple of months. Now, if you currently own a 5K iMac, perfectly fine. I would recommend keeping it. There's really not a humongous reason to go rush up to an M1 iMac right now, because the 5K iMacs and the 4K iMac, for the most part, is still fairly powerful for the most part. Of course, I wouldn't recommend keeping it for, you can keep it for a while too, it doesn't matter. But the M1 iMac, again, is the gold standard. I will tell you though, display wise, I still think my 5K iMac is a really good display, but I like the lack of a little bit less bezel on the M1 iMac. That is a big thing that I noticed up front. You're getting, I guess, a better looking device from the M1 iMac, but I prefer the black bezels on the Intel iMac, and I also do like the space gray, and I kind of like having that Apple logo on the front too. It's very strange, I'm against the logos, but it just seems like there's a bunch of open space there, and I'm not a huge fan of it. But again, you gotta put the computer somewhere. Hopefully they can put it somewhere else on this device, but again, for now it still works perfectly fine. But the display on the 5K iMac may look better, so that was one thing that really shocked me in my opinion. Now, thinness wise and thickness, the M1 iMac is thinner, I guess, all around. So there's no curvature like the Intel iMac has. So it's just, thin all around. The Intel iMac, I think, is kind of the same thing. Of course it's thicker at its thickest point, but it still isn't that big of a deal. I'm putting it against the wall. It doesn't matter how thick it is, as long as it's 5 feet thick, then it's not really going to matter too much. So that was another thing that kind of shocked me. But on the back, this is the craziest difference. So like I said, my 5K iMac is the older one. The newer ones obviously all have Thunderbolt ports and all that good stuff. But there is a massive difference here that I really haven't heard too many people talk about. The Intel iMac, you cannot expand the RAM on the Intel iMac outside of your standard, thing that you can do. Like you can spec it up. The Intel iMac, you had the capability of expanding the RAM, which is a huge thing. I've not heard anybody talk about this. It's crazy. And that is a massive thing that we could do on the previous model. All we had to do was unplug the cord, take out that little RAM thing at the back, insert new RAM or more RAM or whatever, and that was it. On these M1 iMacs, we cannot do that. And that is a kind of a big deal in my opinion, because Apple has this huge tendency of just increasing the price of the RAM year after year, and it's very annoying. And I don't know if they're going to only spec it out to 16 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of RAM, what the top tier one is, but you could theoretically put as much RAM as you want to before, and now they took that port out, which sucks really bad. So the old Intel iMacs have that capability. The M1 iMac does not have that capability, which is kind of sad to me. On top of this, and this is, in my opinion, especially compared to that 5K iMac, the 4K iMac has less ports, but on my 2015 model, I had a ton, but even on the 2021, you had obviously the headphone jack, great. You had the SD card slot, which is amazing. I love having that. They took it out on all their devices now, which sucks. They had 4 USB ports, USB-A ports, those big ones. They had 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports, and they had the Gigabit Ethernet port on all of the 5K models, and I think you can even spec that up to 10 gigabit. I'm not 100% too sure, I don't remember, but that is a massive thing. Now on our M1 iMac, now again, this is not the top tier one, but still a big thing to keep in mind. On these M1 iMacs, we only have 2 Thunderbolt ports right now on the base model, but of course you can spec it up to get 4 USB-C ports on it, which again is good, but looking at the predecessor, the fact that it had all of those ports and expandable RAM, I mean, that's pretty crazy in my opinion. The software, the performance and everything obviously is probably going to be a better experience on the M1 iMac. I'm not even going to say probably. It is a better performance, and you do have the, Ethernet port on the top tier models on the actual power brick itself, which is very interesting. But dude, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of all these ports going away. Even on my M1 MacBook Pro, I was kind of iffy on picking it up because of the lack of ports, but there's nothing we can do about it. This is the direction we're going, but I'm really happy to see that the old ones have it. Fortunately, the 2021 M1 iMacs have less ports than the previous ones, and they do not have expandable RAM, which is another massive thing in my opinion. So take it as you will, but that was another thing that I saw right there. Now booting them up, everything's going to be the same. They're probably going to be around the same performance, but I will tell you this, the M1 iMac is the future. You're going to be getting a faster performing machine on there. And I've owned all the MacBooks, the 16-inch one, the 5K iMac, all these ones. Like, I can tell you, I love the performance of Intel-based MacBooks and even Intel-based iMacs. I'm not a huge fan of some glitchiness that happens, and I'm not a huge fan of their cooling system. For some reason, these Intel iMacs and MacBooks, the fans ramp up like crazy, and it's a very annoying thing. It just feels like I have a very outdated MacBook or iMac or whatever that I'm using. Luckily for these M1 iMacs and M1 MacBooks, it's a much better cooling system. That's the biggest thing in my opinion. On top of this though, you are getting the M1 chipset, which is just amazing performance. It is the best performing machine out there for a lot of people, for the price especially. So I will tell you, if you plan on going from an Intel based to an M1 based, yes, there's going to be some downgrades, but for the most part, I think it's going to be net positive. The longevity of these Intel based MacBooks, you guys already know, they're going to be around for a little bit longer. They're not like immediately switching over. It's a slow process. They got into it and now they're getting out of it. But these M1 MacBooks, these M2 MacBooks, M3, these are the future. These are the things that we're going to be getting for the rest of our life now until Apple goes out of business or whatever. So that's essentially the main thing to keep in mind. You're going to be getting a much longer supported phone. You're going to be getting a much longer supported device. But on top of that, you're going to be getting a device that has a future. Intel right now for the iMac side doesn't have a future. They're like just going to abandon it at some point. So there's going to stop being software support on it. And there's going to just be a huge downturn of Intel for a while. So that is another massive thing. Do you want to invest in the future or do you want to invest in the past? Intel right now is the past. M1, because Apple makes it, is the future. So you have a choice. I'll probably tell you, like in my opinion, even though we're giving up more ports and, we're not getting a user replaceable RAM and all that stuff, I would probably still rather have the M1 iMac over the Intel iMac, every single one of those, because of the future that we're getting on M1. I love the cooling system, and also on top of this, I love how it doesn't overheat all the time. I love the smooth performance and it's very fast. And obviously iPhone, iPad apps on MacBook is pretty cool too. I like that feeling more. I loved my Intel iMacs. I loved every single one of them. But the fact that the M1s are the future, I mean, the answer is clear in my opinion. So that essentially covers it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much. But definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count. So it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.